Okay, just picture this for a second. You come up with something that could literally save millions of lives. I mean, a real honest-to-goodness breakthrough. Now, picture not having enough money to keep the lights on in your office. This isn't some Hollywood script. This is the absolutely brutal, real story of a company that has a brilliant solution to a huge problem, but it's on the verge of being completely wiped out by a simple spreadsheet. So yeah, welcome to the main event, science versus spreadsheets. And boom, right out of the gate, a material event of default. You know what that is? That's the super serious official language for we are in deep, deep trouble. It's basically the flare gun a company fires right before the ship goes down. So how on earth did they end up here? Well, we're about to get into it. And hey, if you're into this kind of high-stakes business drama, you're going to want to stick around. Do me a quick favor and hit that subscribe button. It's totally free, and it lets me know you want more stories just like this one. All right, let's turn back the clock.
Okay, let's go back to the beginning. Before all the financial alarm bells and the scary government filings, there was just a really, really good idea. Let's meet the hero of our story.
This is Onconetics, a small company with a huge mission to completely change the game when it comes to detecting prostate cancer. We're not talking about another fitness app here. These guys were building a legitimate, life-saving weapon for doctors to use.
And that weapon is called Proclarix. Now, here's why it's so brilliant. The standard tests that we use right now, well, they can be wrong. A lot. And that means millions of men get pushed into these painful, invasive, and, it turns out, often unnecessary biopsies. Proclarix is basically the smart filter. It uses this really clever algorithm and a few biomarkers to say, hey, wait a minute, let's be absolutely sure before we go down that road. And get this isn't just some pipe dream. The top medical associations in both Europe and the US have already given it their stamp of approval. This thing is the real deal.
96%. Just let that number sink in for a moment. In a clinical study with over 600 patients, this test was accurate 96% of the time. You know, in the world of medicine, that's not just a home run. That's like hitting a grand slam to win the World Series. It's proof that this thing flat out works. This is the heart and soul of the company right here. And look, it's not just a statistic on a slide. It means real people avoiding painful procedures they might not even need. I mean, here's one of the lead doctors from the study saying it himself. The science is solid, the mission is noble. So where did it all go so wrong? And now we pivot. We're leaving the scientific dream behind and diving headfirst into the financial nightmare. Because while the scientists were celebrating this amazing breakthrough, the people in accounting were probably breaking out in a cold sweat. And here is the first major red flag. Negative $13.1 million. That's their EBITDA. Now, don't worry, that's just a fancy finance acronym for a very simple question. Are we making money or losing money? And that giant minus sign in front of that number tells you everything. They are hemorrhaging cash. It's like a rocket burning through all of its fuel before it even gets off the ground. And then this happened. The moment the engine exploded, they defaulted on a $10 million loan. This is the exact event that triggered that terrifying government filing we saw at the very beginning. The company with this incredible life-saving technology couldn't even manage its own bank account. So that brings us to this term that sounds kind of harmless, but is actually pretty scary, a forbearance agreement. You know, think of it like this. You can't make rent, so you go to your landlord and you beg for just one more month. Except in this case, your landlord is a huge corporation, your rent is millions of dollars, and if you screw up again, you don't just get evicted, your entire company could be forced into bankruptcy. It's a lifeline, for sure, but it's an incredibly thin one. And just look at the terms of this deal. I mean, they are brutal. Onconetics now has to hand over 15% of every single dollar that comes in the door, every month. And oh, if they somehow find new investors, the lender just skims 10% of that right off the top. This isn't a repayment plan, it's a financial straitjacket. You know what they say, when there's blood in the water, the sharks start to circle. And a company in this much financial distress, well, it doesn't just attract worried investors, it attracts predators. So, let's talk about the dark art of short selling. The idea is actually pretty simple and pretty ruthless. You borrow someone else's shares in a company, you sell them right away, and then you just pray that the company's stock price completely collapses. If it does, you buy the shares back for pennies, return them, and you keep the difference. You're not just betting against the company.
you are actively betting on its complete failure.
And right now, more than 5% of all of Onconetix's public stock is being shorted. Now, 5% might not sound like a huge number, but what it represents is a growing group of investors who are all placing the exact same bet, that this amazing science is about to get crushed by a terrible balance sheet. Okay, but this is where things get really crazy. To place that bet to short the stock, these investors have to pay a borrowing fee. And just look at these rates. We're talking 40, 45, sometimes over 50%. That is an insane APR. I mean, your credit card probably has a lower interest rate. People are willing to pay these loan shark level fees just for the privilege of betting that this company will fail. That's how certain they are. Look at this chart. You can see the cost to bet against them just skyrocketing to over 50% at one point. It's a feeding frenzy. The financial world sees weakness, and they are pouncing, making the fight for survival that much harder for Onconetix. So you might be sitting there thinking, okay, that's just some really bad luck for one company. But you'd be wrong. See, Onconetix isn't just fighting its own demons. It's sailing straight into a massive storm that's hitting the entire biotech industry. And here's the problem in a nutshell. All the easy money has dried up. A report from JP Morgan basically says that venture capitalists, the folks with the deep pockets who fund these big ideas, are getting really nervous and closing their checkbooks. The big spending party is over.
This chart right here tells the whole story, really. All the investment, all the big money is flowing to the safer companies, the ones that are much further along in their development, closer to the finish line. No one wants to take a gamble on a risky early-stage idea like Onconetix was. They're looking for a sure thing.
And it's not just the venture capitalists either. Even the huge pharmaceutical giants are playing it safe. They're only writing the blockbuster checks for companies that have already proven themselves. So for a small, early-stage company like Onconetix, trying to get funding or a partnership right now is almost impossible. The whole system is stacked against them. So all of this leads us to the final showdown. The one massive conflict that this whole story really boils down to. And this is it. It all comes down to this. On one side, you have the dream, this world-changing science, 96% accurate, that could help millions of people. And on the other side, you have the nightmare, a complete and total financial dumpster fire. They've defaulted on loans, they're burning through cash, investors are nowhere to be found, and the short sellers are circling. And that, right there, is the ultimate question. Do you bet on the brilliant science, or do you run for the hills from the awful finances? In this fight for a company's survival, what ends up mattering more? A revolutionary idea born in a lab, or a negative number on a spreadsheet? For Onconetix, and honestly for the future of innovation itself, that question is everything.